Ralph, I don't know about you, but I'm so excited for this episode.
I am too, Yvonne. This is someone that I have known for a really long time and just love her, respect her. She has been such a huge part of the workers' comp community, not just out in California, but on a national scale as well. How about you?
That's right. I'm excited. I've known this person. So who we're talking about, folks, is Jill Dulich, and she is with the California Self-Insurers Security Fund. I messed it up anyway. California Self-Insurers Security Fund. And it's a great episode. So are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, let's go do it. Hey there, Rafael. I haven't seen you in a while.
It's been a little while. How are you? How's it going with you?
Everything's great, man. Busy, busy, busy. Everybody's moving and shaking. I know you have been too.
You're not kidding.
Well, I know you were at a conference last week and you're headed to a couple places later this week, and so am I. So let's just go ahead. Yeah, let's just go ahead. And I'm so excited about our guest today. We've been waiting a long time to talk to her. And we have none other than Jill Dulich. Hi, Jill.
Hello, guys. How are you?
We're great. How are you doing?
Really well. Thank you very much.
Okay, so tell our listeners where you're joining us from. So for those that don't know you, they know where you are.
Okay. Well, I'm joining you from Costa Mesa, California, which is in Southern California. And I am currently the Director of Claims and Operations for the California Self-Insurers Security Fund. I've been there for about 11 years. Prior to that, I was at Marriott for 32 years. And all in all, I've been in workers' compensation for about 52 years in June. So longer than any sane individual should be in workers' compensation. But
now we know that you love workers' compensation, and that's why you're still here.
I do. Apparently. I must, if I'm still in it. People congratulate me, and I always say, no, condolences are probably the more appropriate thing to give me. So, but it's fun. I mean, it's never a dull moment, that's for sure.
Well, I'm very excited about our conversation today. We were talking just before we started recording here, and it's something that comes up a lot for Rafael and I. So let's just dive into it. I want you to share with our listeners what you think has changed, or what's missing now when we're thinking about workers' compensation and how it started out and what we're dealing with today.
Well, I can't go back to where it started out because I'm not quite that old, but I can tell you when I was, started 52 years ago, the first thing that I was taught when I got into work comp, which was kind of a fluke in the first place, but it was that you contacted the injured worker early and often. That was the key thing. And you were actually reviewed and graded on your contact with that injured worker, because the role was really designed around ushering the injured worker through a very complex process that was not nearly as complex over 50 years ago as it is today. It's just gotten more so and more so. So it's kind of an area that, as I've mentioned to Rafa before, and I think I've talked to you about it, Yvonne, that I just think is missing in workers' compensation today. It's we've sort of lost sight of who we're really here for, and that's the injured worker, to make sure that they are being taken care of and that they know what's happening and that they're communicated with and educated on the system, so they don't feel like they're just lost on an island out in the middle of the ocean with no support.
And why do you think that is? What's changed? What's happened?
Well, I think the first thing is that the systems have, in every state, I've focused mainly on California now, but I've handled basically all states west of the Mississippi. And I think that every state, the procedures and everything has just gotten much more complex. The systems have gotten much more complex. As an example, when I first started in workers' comp in California a long time ago, I guess you could do the math, in 1974, we had one form. It wasn't called this, but everybody called it the green form. And the most critical thing about that form was it had to be on the right shade of green paper. That was the most critical thing about that form, that explained the benefits, but it was one form. It didn't have a lot of legalese. It didn't have a lot of mumbo jumbo. It didn't have a lot of, administrative type things. It was just explaining their benefits and telling them what was going to happen and what they were entitled to. And in California, I can't even count how many forms we have now. Washington's the same way, Oregon's the same way. And so it's just gotten much more complex, much more difficult for people handling the claims, and much more challenging for injured workers that are trying to work through the process. I just think there needs to be some simplification, perhaps, and some efforts to try to get us back to basics, which is taking care of the injured worker and ushering them through this process.
So I was going to say, Ralph, we talk about this a lot, and we talk about, there's not a conference we go to that we're not talking about these things. And we hear a lot of the things that Jill mentioned, early intervention, making sure that you're talking to the injured worker right away after an injury, frequently, making sure that they're being communicated to. We don't have a communication breakdown, and a lot of the other things that she mentioned. So what's going on? Why are things so broken?
I think Jill is on the money, the complexity of this system. And that's another component, Yvonne, that I think we talk about all the time. It has gotten incredibly difficult to meander through this process, to really walk through it from beginning to end with no hiccups, no issues, no problems. And that's all of us who have been in the system for a really long time. Jill, as you correctly point out, imagine what it is like from an injured worker's perspective, who doesn't have the experience, the background, or the understanding of the minutia, right? The details, the forms, the requirements. It is a really, really complex system. I mean, and that's why we came up with this podcast, right? To deconstruct that, to break it down, to truly talk about, each of these components. And Jill, I want to, the world that you swim in right now, right? Explain to folks. So these are either employers or carriers or TPAs who, for whatever reason, are no longer in business, but who at the time were responsible for, right, payment of benefits and administrating these workers' compensation claims. And what's happened to those folks that now your organization gets involved?
Yeah, I mean, the folks that we oversee are the private self-insured employers in the state of California who have defaulted. They either go bankrupt or they've just defaulted on their workers' compensation payments. So the TPA that's handling their claims will notify the director, the chief of the Office of Self-Insurance Plans, that payments are not being made, their impressed accounts are not being funded, they cannot pay benefits. So the director of the Department of Industrial Relations then assigns those files to the Security Fund, and we onboard those, and we assign them to one of our 2 third-party administrators that handles our claims. And so, the problem that we see, that we have, and it become even more apparent to me, and I'll say something a little bit more about that in a minute, but these folks have already been treated so badly by their employers because they've just walked away from them. These people are getting disability benefits, and those have been stopped because there's no payments for that. The doctors won't see them because they're not getting paid. They don't have any idea what's going to happen to them going forward. Am I just, blowing in the wind here? Am I not going to have anything for me? So it's what we have developed is, and that's why I'm so passionate about this, is we have developed a program where the first thing we do is contact those injured workers directly. And if they're represented, then we ask permission from their attorney to contact the injured worker. So we have a direct line of communication with that injured worker. And we explain to them exactly what's going to happen. And that is that we are going to be picking up their benefits. We're going to be notifying all of their providers that we are now taking over these claims, and they will be guaranteed payment. We advise the applicants, in California, it's applicants, attorneys, plaintiff attorneys, that we are now on board, that they are not going to have to worry about them not getting benefits or not getting their PPD award. And we have very specific things that we require those adjusters to do when they're onboarding those claims. We like to try to get that communication out to them within about 2 weeks of our taking over the claims. That doesn't always happen. Depending on the size of the estate that we take in, or the account that we take in. We just took one in, and our most recent one was in June of 2024, and we got over 1,000 claims. When their annual report reported that they had only over 300, their most recent annual report. But because they delayed the bankruptcy, we just got a boatload of new claims. So, and that was a different situation, but we still tried to reach out to all those injured workers and communicate to them what's going to happen so that they did not get lost in the shuffle. So that's how we handle it. At Marriott, we also had 48 hours from the time that new report was, that new loss was reported to us, for that adjuster to contact that injured worker. And they were measured on that, and we recorded that. And so we knew exactly what was happening to explain their benefits. We sent however they wanted communication, by text, by email. We would communicate and explain all of that to them. We also had nurses on staff that would reach out immediately as well and say that they were going to, hold their hand through that medical process, so that they knew that they were going to get medical treatment. No, they were not going to have to pay for it themselves. No, there are no co-pays. And, these are the forms you're going to be receiving. The adjuster would tell them, we're obligated by law to send you these forms. So we have to send them, but let me explain it to you in plain English. So I've been very focused on making sure that we put that injured worker first. And at Marriott, it was very important to us because they were our peers. We were self-insured and self-administered. So every time we went if one of our folks went to a hotel, for all they knew, one of the people that was checking them in at the front desk was an injured worker whose claim they might have been handling.
Sure.
So, it was really, and that's how I think everybody should look at that. And I mean, think about this as if this was your child, or your partner, or your parent, or a sibling, or your best friend, how would you want them to be treated, and what kind of information would you want them to have? So that's kind of been my focus for a very long time. It is problematic sometimes, just because the adjusters don't have the time, because they're too busy doing all the ancillary stuff. And they lose focus on what their focus should be on. So that's kind of, and that, we had a lot of training sessions for the adjusters. We gave them breaks. The managers would cover stuff so that they could get that contact done. And then we created a specific position, which was a DBA, a disability benefit assistant. That was the person that would reach out to that injured worker and explain to them in detail what their benefits were going to be. That's all they did. They did all their benefit distribution, and calculation, distribution, and communication to that injured worker about what their benefits were going to be, their indemnity benefits. So it made that injured worker feel better because they knew at the front end. And we were bilingual, trilingual. I mean, we had several Asian languages, Spanish, French. We had, several people in our office that could speak those languages fluently, so that they could actually communicate with those injured workers in their native language, and they would be able to understand exactly what was happening.
And did that help? Did that help the situation when you had those things in place?
Yes, it did help a lot. It helped a lot, because the injured workers, they and at the larger hotels, there was HR was there for them. So they could go to HR and they could say, I don't know what's going to happen, and HR could link them through. But in the smaller hotels, in the select service hotels, the Courtyards, the Fairfield Inns, they did not have dedicated HR departments. They might have one person and they're doing everything, and work comp really wasn't on their plate. So that's why we wanted to make sure that we took that off their plate and really managed that for them. But our litigation rate at Marriott, when I was there, was far less than the industry standard in California. And we actually had attorneys that would not take workers' compensation claims against Marriott, because they said, what am I going to be able to do? I'm going to just create problems. I mean, some of the attorneys that will take anything would take them, but the ones that really cared about the injured worker, they were just like, until they're not taking care of you, I don't need to represent you. So,
Jill, I think you've already started to talk about this with us already. Case count per adjuster. That's a huge component of this equation, right?
Yes.
Because an overwhelming number of files, no one has the time for the one-on-one communication we're talking about. Other than keeping that case count reasonable, what other components of this equation, right? What have you learned over your 50-year plus? How can we help that adjuster be better, do better, right? We know that case count is important. What other components do you think out there are keeping them from doing their very best?
I think part of it is one of the things, and Marriott was guilty of this, we kind of pushed back on that too, was external pressures on those adjusters to, meet the KPIs. You're graded on so many things that your focus just starts, because it impacts you personally, your focus starts to shift. I've got to get this done on time. I've got to get this report on time. I've got to report this up. I've got to, make sure that I'm getting my reserves done at the proper time. I've got to do all these things. And it really, I think that you really need to ease up two things. Ease up a bit on the external pressures that are put on those adjusters, because otherwise that's all they focus on. And also the other thing is to not reward, but to commend adjusters for managing the injured workers process. And I think finding resources that can support that. And that's one of the reasons Marriott, when we were at Marriott, I was at Marriott, we were one of the first self-insured employers in the country that put nurses in the hotels, and also a full cadre of nurses in the claims offices to manage all of that stuff. And so you take that whole medical management piece that the adjusters, frankly, are not really qualified to handle because they're not medical experts. You take that out of their bailiwick, out of their realm or their scope of responsibility, and you put that with the individual that can manage that effectively, that can talk to the doctor, can find out from the injured worker, do you have other issues going on? How can we help you get through those so that we can get your healing moving faster? Providing resources and the kind of support that the adjuster might need. So, claims assistants that are specially trained in certain areas, like what we did with the DBAs, so that they don't have to focus on that so much. They're there as a resource, but they're not there constantly doing that communication just on the benefits side of it. But I think to me, and I've said this, I sound like a broken record. I think you both have heard me say this, is, we just keep hammering on the adjusters with all these obligations and all these pressures and all these commitments and all these expectations that are unreasonable. And then we wonder why the litigation rate is so high. We wonder why they're burning out. We wonder why they don't have the ability anymore to be empathetic or to be a listener, because they simply don't have time. What are you going to do? We actually brought people into our office, kind of I don't want to call them therapists, but they were therapists. We would bring them in and we would teach the adjusters, tips to decompress, tips to how to relax, tips, and give them the permission. Step away when there's a problem. Step away when you feel like
you're still talking about your role at Marriott. This happened?
Yeah, at Marriott. Yeah. I don't do that. I can't do that now because I'm not over the TPAs, but I hold the TPAs to a standard that requires that they allow them to do that. But we keep those caseloads really low at the TPA, both TPAs that we have. But at Marriott, we would bring people in to try to give them an opportunity and just bring them in and talk to them, just one-on-one. You want to come in and yell about something and vent? Come on in. We'll go into the conference room or we'll go into the lunchroom and we'll close the door and just yell and scream. Take a walk around the building. The last thing I wanted them to do was to burn out, because what good is that? We had some of the best of the best adjusters, and I wanted to make sure that they wanted to be the best of the best, and that we weren't putting too much pressure on them, which is hard because you're in a corporate environment and there's all those expectations. But I think there's ways to manage that by giving them some tools, giving the adjusters some tools, and also giving managers tools so that they don't add fuel to that fire.
Jill, have we gotten better about that? I've been in workers' comp for 40 years, and I remember getting started where that which you just offered us wasn't an acceptable component of the equation. I mean, both of you have been advocates for this type of remedy. Let's talk about it. Let's find solutions. Let's do something about how to get you ready and more healthy to be able to handle what we know is a complex area. So it sounds to me like over time, we've gotten better at it, but maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part. What do you think?
I think the latter. I think it's wishful thinking on your part.
Yeah.
I think people want it to get better. And I think, the one thing that I just wanted to add one other thing. I think the one thing that really is kind of missing is how often do we go to the adjuster and say, tell me what you need to help you do your job the way you want to do your job, the best way you can do your job.
Wow. That is the question right there, right? That we should all be asking all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Yvonne. Take it. Okay, I can
So
tell
I wanted to ask to sort of frame this up is, so Jill, you bring a ton of knowledge, a wealth of experience to this conversation. Looking back on your career, what is one thing, if you had the ability to do so, what's one thing you would change that would impact all these things that we're talking about? One thing you would change.
Wow, you should have warned me about that question. I think the one thing that I would change is treating adjusters as like human beings and not machines. I mean, I don't know how, that's pretty blunt, but that's what I would want to see changed. I think that a lot of promises are made, when people are selling their services, a lot of promises are made, and the guys that are way up here are making all these promises that the people that are down here having to meet those promises are not going to be able to manage. Yeah. And I think that's why we've had we've had a tremendous amount of turnover. That's why we have a dearth of adjusters all across the country, bringing new people in. And I think that that needs to be much more carefully evaluated and looked at, and that the adjuster is actually treated like a human being and not a machine.
Well, we've had many studies. I'm thinking of the Rising studies that come out every year that have talked about that disconnect for quite a few years running now. So it's interesting. So I would agree with you. So, I mean, my mind's going into this whole other conversation I'd like to have about what do we need to do? Because Ralph and I go round and round, and usually I am told that, you just need to get in line, and this is the way that it is, and it's never going to change because everybody's making money off of it the way that it is. But I think we really are coming to a point in time where we're at a crossroads, and especially with the onslaught of AI and all the AI and all the other things that add to the complexity of the job. It makes me think that it's more important now than ever, right? To make sure, because like I said, we go to any conference, what are they talking about? They're telling the adjusters, you need to, early intervention is the most critical thing you can do. Communicate early and often and frequently and all these things. But how can they do that if they don't have the tools in order to do that? And like you said, I was very happy to hear that at Marriott, you provided support in the way that you described it. I think that is something that we should do more of at every workplace, not just, related to workers' compensation.
Oh, absolutely.
The other question I wanted to ask you is, what is something you wish somebody told you earlier on in your career? What is one thing you wish somebody had explained to you or revealed to you? That Ralph and I are always joking about how we had to learn everything through the school of hard knocks, right?
Yes.
And one of the things that we love, that we're trying to do with this podcast, is to alleviate some of those long roads to the experience and the knowledge. So what's one thing you wish somebody had told you when you were early in your career?
I think somebody would. I mean, I'm a little different though. I mean, I got my master's degree in counseling and psychology. So I was sort of on a counseling role, that I wanted to do. But I think if somebody would have told me back then that the things that you need to be able to do well to make sure that you're successful, there's a couple of things. You need to be well organized. You need to be responsible.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be an active listener. You need to be empathetic, and you need to take a break when it's too much for you. Nobody ever told me when things feel like your head is going to explode, walk away from it for a while. Take some time, get away. The expectation is bam, 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 bam. Everything is so deadline driven. And I wish somebody would have just told me, because early in my career, I went through a lot of stress issues because I was unable to walk away, because that was in my own head, because nobody gave me permission. And I think that, giving them permission at the front end to say, this is a tough job. You have permission to just step away. If you need 2 hours, step away and figure out what helps you, learn your skills to kind of put you back in the game, and then you'll be fine. And, nobody's going to punish you, hopefully. I would never. I know some people aren't that way, but I think people need to have that permission to do that. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
We're never going to be able to build the cadre of adjusters that we need.
Well, that's something, again, that Rafael and I talk about a lot. I think it's something that I talk about and think about a lot just in general. I think a lot of that has to do with not just our industry. I think our society is just very wound around work. And we're very driven, and we're very,
everything has to be responded to immediately. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's like nobody's going to die if you wait 2 hours to respond. It's just, and I think, but it was that way 50 years ago. Honestly, the expectation was that the response time had to be nothing. You need to get back to them right now. Well, I've got 16 people that I've got to get back to right now. So somebody's going to have to wait. And, I think that pressure on individuals is just more than a lot of people can manage.
Well, I do agree that, we've talked to a few other folks this season about the file caseloads, that you allow. And I think definitely keeping those to a lower number is definitely good. But Ralph, any other points you want to make before we wrap it up?
Jill, I think that what you have just given us may be, in my opinion, the most important and significant conversation that we may have had in all of our 6 years here. It is so incredibly powerful to hear somebody with your years of experience in the system, because I think we all three of us, right, came in and we were met with no permission to take that break, no permission to say no for a second or two. Can I think about this? Can I get better and come back? From personal experience, that wasn't an option. That wasn't a choice. You had to take it and go. You had to smile through it and serve, to the detriment of all of us. Like you said, we all struggled early on as we learned, how in the world do I handle these serious issues, this much volume, and still keep myself, safe enough and healthy enough to be able to do it again tomorrow. So,
Was there a question there?
I don't know that there is. I just want to acknowledge, right, Yvonne, how incredibly powerful that is. I think it's so important. I'm so glad you said it, and especially the way you did.
Let me just finish with saying, I think one of the things that we always need to be aware of is that workers' compensation is a very emotional industry to be in.
Yes.
It's emotional for the injured worker. It's emotional for the injured worker's family. It's emotional for the employer. It's emotional for the coworkers, and it's emotional for the adjusters. Their adjusters are the only ones that are expected to hold the line.
Yes.
And that is asking a huge amount of those adjusters. you have to listen to stories of these people whose their entire lives have been changed. Catastrophic injuries, fatalities. I mean, just regular injuries. That injured worker, that individual did not go into work that day expecting to be an injured worker. And now their whole life has changed. And so I think we have to really focus on the fact that that emotional part of it is something that everybody is going to experience. And we have to give grace to everybody in that area. And most importantly, to that adjuster that's trying to manage and coordinate all of that.
Hear, hear.
So yeah, I mean, it almost reminds me, there's another conversation that I've had with a few people that talks about what you just mentioned. And it's almost as if when you think about particularly those adjusters that are handling those catastrophic cases, and we talk about, workplace trauma, I don't know that we are equipping the adjusters who are handling particularly those really complicated cases with the right tools and emotional support to help them navigate all that. It's a lot, like you said, it's a lot to carry. I want to ask you, because like I had suspected, we've talked about a lot of things that are not necessarily going right with the industry. We always like to end on a positive note. So what would you say, Jill, to folks that are kicking the tires, thinking about coming into the workers' compensation industry, after talking about all these issues that we just talked about? What is that glimmer that you think would be something for a newer professional to latch onto that's perhaps coming to the industry for the first time?
I think I would say that you can change people's lives for the better. You have that ability in the palm of your hand to change people's lives for the better that are going through very difficult situations. And you have the ability to move them through and give them hope and give them, ease their fears and to help them through the process. And I think that, not everybody's going to be just like, the three of us have been in this business forever. Not everybody's going to want to do that. But the ones that are going to want to do that are the ones that are going to really thrive in workers' compensation. And it's an industry also that gives you a tremendous career path, a lifetime career if you want it. And you can grow and excel and exceed all expectations, so don't sell yourself short. Just go in, all hands on, and make it happen. I don't know if that's the answer you wanted, but that's
I love that. No, I wasn't fishing for any particular answer, but I think that was a good one. And I think, like we've said before in other conversations, it really is a noble profession, particularly if you're going to sit at the adjuster desk. You're holding a person's life in your hands, truly. And I think it's so, for those that are willing to accept that challenge, I think it's a really remarkable job that they can have and walk away every day and realize that they've really impacted many people's lives in that day.
I mean, look at just the three of us. If we added up all of our years, I mean, clearly there's something good about the business to be in, good about the industry.
Absolutely. People are the best. Ralph, you get the closing question.
All right, Jill. Serious conversation here. This has been deep. Let's loosen that up. I want to ask you, what do you do for fun? What do you do to get away from all of this? What do you do in your downtime? How do you take a break? What do you do, to have a little fun out there?
I don't know how much fun, but the first thing is I do a lot of walking. I walk a lot. I mean, that's kind of my ability to get the monkey chatter out of my head. I put in my earbud and I listen to the radio and get that out of my system. And then the other thing that we do for fun that I really enjoy is travel a lot. Travel a lot internationally, everywhere, experiencing other cultures, experiencing other people, learning what they're all about. And that just kind of floats my boat big time. I love meeting people in different countries and understanding where they're coming from. And that's my really fun thing. And I'm lucky enough to have a partner who loves to travel too. So it's really, really helpful for me. So
what's the last trip you took?
The last trip we took was New Zealand. We did the North and South Islands of New Zealand and ended in Australia. And in
Wow.
June, we are going to France for 3 weeks. And then in November,
nice.
we're starting in Athens, and we're taking a cruise from Athens to Lisbon in
Very
November.
nice.
So we have, both of them are 3-week trips. So we have.
Can I come along? Do you need an assistant with your luggage or?
Sure, you can Sherpa all you want, honey. Not a problem. My husband would love that because he's not going to be the Sherpa. I don't know that you could lift my suitcase though, because I take so much stuff. For all the
Oh
years
my
of
goodness.
traveling, I've never gotten down in it. That is my biggest problem. I've never been able to compress all my stuff. So I always take a big fat suitcase. So
Oh no, I get on to my daughters about that because I have a daughter that lives in Italy, so we travel at least once a year over to Europe, and I've made sure that they've gotten it. Like the younger one particularly, she would take like a whole small suitcase with just her hair products and her curling iron and her dryer. And I'm like, you're not going to have time to style your hair. Just leave it all home.
No, that's me. I take my curl. I do it all. I'm your daughter's mother instead of you being your daughter's mother. Somehow she's following my lead. Yeah.
But yeah, when you have to hop on and off trains really quickly, it's not so fun to haul all that stuff.
That's true.
That's how we learned. The first year we were hopping on and off trains, and I was like, never again. I'm going to take this much stuff with me.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Well, listen, Jill, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, it's always fun to chat with you, and I appreciate you taking the time. So, like we always say, until we see you next time, hasta luego.
luego.
You ready for a warm-up, Rafael?
Yes, ma'am.
Me.
La 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 la
la. I wonder if Arden is laughing or cursing at us about that.
This may be right about the time where everybody turns it off.
Hey, Rafael, can you believe it? We are halfway through season 6.
I can't. It just feels like we just got started a couple of weeks ago, and now it's halfway through. It's amazing. Time is flying, right?
Time does seem to be flying. So folks, thank you so much for listening with us. We are currently about to hit 55,000 downloads. We have published 151 episodes. That's a big number.
That's a big number.
And where can folks find us, Ralph?
Well, Yvonne, always, folks can find us on LinkedIn. And I know that we've got a beautiful website that you've put together that folks can come and really learn all about Deconstructing Comp and our latest project this year, Substack, right? With newsletter and all. I don't know how you find the time, but we are incredibly grateful for everybody who's visiting and absorbing the newsletters as well, right?
That's right. You can also find us on YouTube. We launched our YouTube channel last year, and we're playing around with that a lot more. So go find our YouTube videos and chat with us out there. You can comment, you can send us messages. And then, as always, follow us on your favorite podcast platform, wherever you like to listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, you name it. And like us, rate us, share us with your colleagues. That is how people find us, and that's how we can expand our reach. So like Rafael said, look for us on LinkedIn, Yvonne Guibert or Rafael Gonzalez. And the podcast has its own LinkedIn page, Deconstructing Comp Podcast. So until next time, hasta luego.